Hello mini makers. Today we'll be making a Monty Mole for Mario. We can begin with the basic shapes. Add a sphere, then delete half of the vertices in edit mode to make a hemisphere for the head. We can then add another sphere and use proportional editing to make the body. We can then continue to scale and size the body and head to get a good jumping off point for later details. For the arms, we can add a sphere, then add the skin modifier and subdivide surface modifiers. We can increase any size of the vertices using Control A. If you want to scale them solely in the Y dimension, you can use Control A, then hit Y. We will continue to do this until we get the general shape of the hands, and then we can mirror the hands across the body. We can then select the other arm, right click, separate by selection, and then shape the arm how you would see in the concept art by selecting the vertices in edit mode and using G to grab them. It can easier to see the vertices if you're in X-ray mode. For the feet, we can add a sphere, delete half the vertices, and then use proportional editing to get a foot that looks closer to the photo. We can then move on to making the claws for the toes. We can do this by adding a cylinder, then selecting all the vertices at one of the ends and sizing it inward with S. And we can move it in the Z dimension to create the little toe bend. We can then use an overlay modifier to create equidistant claws. For the pad at the bottom of the foot, we can inset the faces on the foot with I. Then we can use the Loop Tools add-on and use Circle to make a more circular shape. We can then exclude this circular shape in the Z dimension. We can then continue to mess with the shape and rotation of the toes until you're at a point where you feel happy, and we can then union the toes to the foot. We can do the same process to make the hand claws as we did to make the toe claws. The only difference is that we will not add a bend at the end of the toe claw, and we will make them slightly longer and less stubby. We can use the overlay modifier to make equidistant hand claws, and then we can continue to size them with S and rotate them with R to get a position that you enjoy. We can then move the interior claws slightly outwards to give it a closer shape to the concept art. We can then duplicate those claws and use them to serve as the claws on the other hand. Before you union the claws to the arms, you should separate the claws by selection and then union them to each other. Because if you do not do this, you will have issues with overlapping geometries in a non-manifold object. This will lead to issues during the 3D printing process. We can then go into sculpt mode and use the snake hook tool to move the arm into place to give it a little bit more of a shoulder connection. We can also move to make the tail, which is a cylinder with the vertices near one end slightly scaled inward. We can now refine the body of Monty Mole in sculpt mode. We can do this by using the snake hook tool with symmetry enabled. For the tooth, we can add a cube and then scale one end in the X dimension and then scale it in the Z dimension to give it a long buck tooth look. Moving to the white mustache, we can add a sphere and use proportional editing to get it in the general shape. We can then refine the shape in sculpt mode using the snake hook tool and the inflate tool. We can then mirror the mustache across the head using the mirror modifier and make sure that merge is not enabled, because these will be union to each other after we separate them by selection. If you have any suggestions for what I should make next, please let me know in the comment section. To add the nose, add a cube with 4 levels of subdivided surfaces. Then we can use S to scale the nose until it looks like the art. This can be done by adding more edge loops in edit mode using the loop cut tool if you would like. After we union the mustache, we can finish off the shape in sculpt mode using the snake hook tool and the pinch tool. We can union the body to the head, and then we can begin smoothing the connection between the head and the body with the clay strips tool and the smooth tool, adding geometry with dynamic topology when necessary. After we've unioned the tail to the body and smooth the connection between the tail and the body, we can finish off the shape in sculpt mode with the snake hook tool set to a large radius. If you like the model and want to find a free 3D printable version, please go to my printables page in the description and download it for yourself. If you would like to support more videos and more models, please support me on my Patreon page. We can then add the white pattern on the stomach using the mask tool in sculpt mode by drawing with the mask tool, inverting the mask with Ctrl I, and then using the inflate mesh filter tools to push the stomach out slightly. We can then mess with the pose slightly before unioning all the pieces together. I'm just making it look slightly more like the art by pushing one foot up And now we can move on to the eyes. This can be made using the mask tool with stabilized strokes enabled, and then inverting the mask with Control I, and pushing the eyes out slightly with the inflate mesh filter tool. We can union the arms to the body and then smooth out the connections between the arm and the body using the smooth tool and the clay strips tool to make it seem like there's a more natural connection point between the arms and the body. This can be done by giving a little bit more volume to where the points are connected, and on the right arm, add a little bit more volume on the shoulder area. The next step we can do is by using a fur texture alpha blush. Make sure that there's a mask over the eyes to avoid the eyes being textured with fur pattern. When adding the texture to the mole, you want to give it enough strength so that it is visible when you print the model, but you do not want to give it so much strength that it starts to distort your model. If you're enjoying the video so far, please don't forget to like and subscribe. This would help Monty Mole find a wider audience and help more people make the fun characters that they want from video games and pop culture. The last modeling we have to do is add the whiskers, which is done by adding a cylinder, scaling the cylinder in the Z dimension, and making the cylinder slightly smaller in one of the sides so that it appears like a tip. Then we can mirror the cylinder across the body. The last thing to do is to paint the mole using the paintbrush in sculpt mode. And while that is happening, I'll talk to you about a couple of things that I enjoy about Monty Mole's design and a couple of things that I appreciated more after modeling it. First, I would say is that I love moles. I feel like moles are a very, very fun animal, and that every game would be better if you just added a mole in it. Something else I enjoy about Monty Mole's design is that they made the feet bigger but kept the arms smaller. While normally when you get a mole, they either have large hands and large feet or just large hands. Monty Mole went with large feet and small hands, and I believe that adds to the uniqueness of Monty Mole and makes it appear slightly more humanized. I also like the one singular tooth that you see in Monty Mole's design. It makes it a very simple but standard design. The body connection with the head is also very cool because the head is more of a semicircle in design than just a sphere. And when we have other simple video game characters, we usually see one sphere on top of another sphere. And this makes Monty Mole stand out as well.